Reid.
Hello, my name is Steven Reid, and I'd like to talk to you today about some problems that are going on with our society. Our society today is experiencing everything from poverty to mental disorders and all kind of health problems, and many of those can be attributed directly to the lack of the fatherly involvement in the home. I'm reminded of a story about a man who worked all the time. He was always busy, and he never had time for his son. He had a young son, and his son would always want to interact with him. Dad, can we ride our bikes together? Dad, will you throw the ball with me? Dad, will you read me a story? And the father's response would always be, son, I'm busy, I'm working. So one day, the young boy asked his dad, Dad, how much do you make when you work? And the dad told him, I make $25 an hour. So the boy hurried upstairs and opened his piggy bank, and he found $50. And he ran downstairs and said, Dad, I've got $50. Will you please let me have 2 hours of your time? That leads me to believe and understand that society does not want to recognize the father's importance, but it's our duty as Christians to realize how important a man in the rearing of a child is. Statistics show that a home without a father adversely affects the child in more than one way. I'm going to show you 3 points today. The first point being that the house without a fatherly involvement, those children stand a 5% chance more than other children of being raised in poverty. In 1997, 65% of children living in a home where the father was not present lived in poverty. And this is according to Americans' Children, a key national indicator of well-being. Secondly, 20 to 30% of those same children experienced poisoning or some form of accident because there was no threat of or no response of discipline in the home. So the child felt free to roam around and do whatever he or she wished to do, and then they would end up hurting themselves. 20 to 30% more likely for children without fatherly involvement. And next, children who grew up without fatherly involvement stood more of a chance of being sexually molested. When a father was involved with his child for at least 3 years, he was less likely to sexually assault that child. Closely connected to general health and poverty is the fact that antisocial behaviors can be attributed to the lack of fatherly involvement. Children are more likely to develop behavioral problems such as lying and crime and stealing when there's no fatherly involvement. They also have an increased risk of suffering depression, wanting to actually commit suicide. And all those are directly correlated to lack of fatherly involvement. And this is per parental involvement with adolescents and intact families. And finally, I'd like to introduce you to a statistic that's really heart-tugging, is that those children who do not have fatherly involvement begin to take risks to try to fill in for that lack of fatherly involvement. And those risks are things like smoking. Children are 1.6 to 1.8 times more likely to begin smoking if they don't have fatherly involvement in the home. They are also 1.5 to 1.9% more likely to be involved in alcohol when they don't have fatherly involvement. And children in the homes where fathers are hands-on are less likely to take on and start to do drugs. And this comes from the National Survey of American Attitudes on Substance Abuse. in summary, it's time for us to take a stand as Christians, to start to tell our young boys and tell them how important it is for them to be fathers in their homes, to be not to experience premarital sex, but to wait until it's time to be fathers. And in closing, I'm reminded of a time when my mother would always say these words, and they resonate in my spirit a lot. And she said, "I'm going to tell your daddy." And that used to bring fear and strike fear in my heart, because I knew if she said that she was going to tell my dad I'd done something that she felt that she couldn't punish me enough for. But then I started to realize that when she said that, she would also be saying that there were some good things that were going to be said, that I got a good report card of, and how proud I was to hear her say that she was going to tell Dad. And that's simply because he was involved in my life and he cared what went on in our lives. He have not spent an hour in jail because he cared what went on in our lives. We have to take a stand and bring America back. Thank you.